live, man.
You're National Press Secretary with the American Federation for Children, and I heard the morning show today on SuperTalk Mississippi talking about this very issue, talking about school choice. The state of Mississippi has been struggling with this debate for some time now and can't seem to get it right.
Well, Scott, it's great to be with you, and I'm sure we'll get everybody in the appropriate order as you need here. You know, it's interesting. We're seeing just this sort of rapid movement for school choice across America. You know, I live in North Carolina. My home state pulled 50,000 kids off of an opportunity scholarship waitlist last year. We're seeing this continual momentum building. We even hear the president talk about wanting to send education back to the states. And then we look to my home state where I was born, about 44 years ago, born in Columbus, Mississippi, by way of Columbus Air Force Base. And, Mississippi kind of lags behind as it relates to what educational choice options might be available. And so we're hoping that as this momentum kind of continues to build across the country, maybe we can look around and states can look around and say, hey, what is happening? What can we do to expand these options? Because candidly, for far too long, we've just been in this system that has grown bigger and bigger and bigger and has told people because you live here, because your zip code's this, and oftentimes because your income is this, you can only have access to these schools, and that's just not good enough for students across America. And so we're hoping that we can continue to see just some more growth here and some more expansion across the country, and in Mississippi specifically.
Is there a template that you've seen work in other states? Is there a federal standard that we should strive towards in individual states for school choice options?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what you've got to do is state legislatures really have to take a look at what could work best for their students in that state. It would not be appropriate for me to say, hey, look, the model that we have in North Carolina, just copy and paste in Mississippi, or even the model that they have across the border in Alabama, which, by the way, has about $100 million in a program, a lot of kids being able to benefit. And I know there's always competitive juices flowing down there in the SEC. So, not too far away, Alabama's got some more options. It wouldn't be appropriate to suggest, hey, let's do exactly what they're doing there. But what it's about is let's find ways to empower parents, families, and students with educational choice. So whether that's expanding charter access, and not a lot of charters in the great state of Mississippi, whether that's making sure that regulations aren't too burdensome for our homeschool community, or whether that's creating tax credits, opportunity scholarships, education savings accounts for families to use towards private school tuition, all those options on the table, we tend to see, provide families with, hey, let's go see what the best fit for us is. And, we're seeing, Scott, across the country, and even in my own household, like kids don't learn the same, even if they're from the same family, they might need different opportunities. So to have just robust educational options, while at the same time ensuring that those community schools are getting what they need right across the great state of Mississippi, that only helps lift it a little bit more. So you can look and see what other states are doing, but legislatures have to say, what's going to be the best fit for what we've got here? I know this much. If you've got a special needs program that's helping maybe about 1,000 kids in Mississippi right now, there is more that can be done in educational choice and freedom in Mississippi. And so we urge legislators to look at it. They've explored some things in the past, but the momentum right now is real. Like when the president sits in the Oval Office and says, I love school choice, we have to send education back to the states. This should be a rallying cry, especially in conservative states like Mississippi.
So, Brian, you mentioned Alabama. Mississippi surrounded by other states that have already enacted school choice: Arkansas, Tennessee, Louisiana. And I don't understand why Mississippi has taken so long. A supermajority, Governor Tate Reeves. The concern I would have, and help alleviate my concern on this, and one of the benefits perhaps of having a national Department of Education is setting some standards for every state. We're already seeing the disparity between states in the educational system. If every state is making their own rules and setting their own standards, isn't there a danger perhaps that some of those differences could grow even wider?
Well, let me first address sort of why, maybe why not is sort of the beginning of the question there. It's hard to say, right? I mean, you've got to take a look at what's happening in states to know why it sometimes takes so long to get more things like school choice. But even use Texas as an example. Sort of a pretty red state there. You look at Texas and you think sort of conservative values across states. It's taken a while to get school choice moving in Texas. Now they will get it done this year. Governor Abbott dedicated to it, state legislature dedicated to it, and they're about to create the largest day one school choice program in the history of the country, meaning once this passes, and it will pass in Texas, you're talking about $1 billion and upwards of 90,000 kids on day one they'll have access to a program. So you've got to look at states and say, look, sometimes it just takes a while to get there. To your question about sort of the federal government's involvement in education, I think the furthest the federal government can be away from educating students in our states, the better. I mean, we've looked at 40 years of the Department of Education. And while throughout that entire 40 years, almost my entire lifetime, test scores have been stagnant, if not improving at all. And so we've got to do something different, returning education back to the states, let legislatures in the state empower families with choice in education, and then put those mechanisms in place. And then I'm just a believer that the ultimate accountability lies with parents and families. They know their kids best. You can see that sign over my shoulder, parents know best. They know what's happening as it relates to their kids' education. And too, Scott, and maybe you saw this, we saw it in our own household, families have seen it across America. COVID did show us where there were some inequities. Families saw the way in which education was delivered to their children, the way they consumed it and then pushed it back out, maybe like they never had seen before. And I think it showed where there were some gaps. And so we're just believers that the more options you can put in front of families, it can just help in those opportunities.
Brian, I want to pick up there and hold you over to the next segment if we can. Sure. Brian Jodice, he's National Press Secretary for the American Federation for Children. You can find them on X at AFC Press. It's Middays with Gerard Gibbert. I'm Scott Sands on SuperTalk Mississippi from the Element Wealth Studios. We're talking school choice right now, though, with Brian Jodice. He's National Press Secretary for the American Federation for Children. And Brian, off the air, you mentioned that some of the conservatives in the state of Mississippi may not be exactly aligned with the plan that President Trump has for school choice.
Well, Scott, again, great to be with you. And it's like two prodigal sons returning home. 44 years ago, I was born in Columbus, Mississippi, when my dad was at Columbus Air Force Base. And so it really is great to be on the air with you today, back in the home state, right? As an Air Force kid, when you grow up and you move around the country, people always ask, where are you from? I said, well, I'm from America because of, these reasons. So it really is great to be with you. Yeah, it's an interesting time.
My friends have bets on whether or not my Southern accent comes back out by the end of the show.
You've got the perfect radio voice, my friend. So stick to what you're doing there. It is interesting. It is a breath of fresh air from our perspective to watch the president sit in the White House and say, I love school choice, and say things like we have to send education back to the states. And so President Trump really does have the opportunity to be the school choice president. And that's pretty remarkable. But look, sometimes it takes states time to get on board and to find creative ways in which they can unlock educational freedom across the country. I think there are a few things to look at, and you can look at the way in which it's worked successfully in other states. My state, where I call home now, in North Carolina, we've got an opportunity scholarship program, what folks might know as a voucher, that just last November pulled about 50,000 kids off the wait list. And then we continue to see more movement and momentum across the country. South Carolina has something in the works. Idaho just signed a new bill into law yesterday. Texas stands ready to create the largest day one school choice program in the history of the country. Tennessee just brought a new ESA program into the fold. So we're seeing this pick up. And then, states have to say what can be the best fit for our families, whether that's expanding access to public charter schools across Mississippi, whether that's ensuring that homeschool families have what they need to be able to be successful, or creating ways to expand what's already there for kids to be able to get access to some tuition assistance at private schools. So Mississippi has an ESA that's for special needs kids. I think they're looking to clear the wait list. I think Speaker White has been very strong on that and wanting to do that, and we commend him for that. And then look for other ways to do that. And then what's beautiful too, and I'll sort of end here for now, is that while all that's happening, there is a push in Washington to get education back to the states. And we think the best way to do that is through this Educational Choice for Children Act. The president wants to lead on that. House and Senate want to lead on that. And it's a way to create a tax incentive for individuals and corporations to donate to state-based scholarship granting organizations who can then help in any state. So even if states don't have very modest school choice programs, there could be a way in the future for more families to get some assistance.
Is it realistic that we can expect the dissolution of the Department of Education during the Trump administration, or at least I think what everybody would like to see, because you need to maintain some standards and guidelines, at least a dramatic reduction in the DOE?
Well, I think the president's made it pretty clear where he stands on that. But I also think Secretary McMahon once confirmed, and we anticipate that could happen early next week. Look, she's got a big job in front of her. You're talking about 40 years of a bureaucracy that's only grown while test scores across our country have remained stagnant. Something drastic has to change. And it doesn't mean that you have to shutter all programs or get rid of things that are very important for kids across our country, special needs programs, civil rights protections, but those things could happen differently. They could happen in different departments that are already in existence. Something has to change, that's for sure. The president's made it clear what he wants to do. And what we've said is, here's a great way to do it. Do things like the Educational Choice for Children Act, get funds back into families' hands, into kids' backpacks as quickly as possible, and then let them find the place that's the best fit. I mean, I have a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. We're having to navigate these very options ourselves as they go through their own educational journey. My educational journey started kindergarten, first and second grade in Columbus, Mississippi. Then we moved to Virginia, then to North Carolina, then to Virginia again to go to high school. Like, it's different everywhere you go. Kids are different in every different style. So we've got to just find more opportunities to unlock school choice options. And we're seeing that happen across the country. Hopefully we can see Mississippi do a little bit more as well.
So, Brian, Jordan and I talked about this the other day when I was sitting in with him, and it really boils down to the money. And our tax money funds education. I think many of us believe that the money should go where we decide it's best used. And right now in Mississippi, the average is about $7,000 per kid. If you've got the option to send your child to the school where you think they will learn best, isn't there a danger perhaps that some schools will suffer? And here's the where I'm going with this is I had the benefit of a Catholic education. My mom worked hard to put me through Catholic school, through elementary school in Mobile and St. John High School in Gulfport, which is now part of the St. Patrick system. And that was obviously a lot of work on her part to be able to afford those tuitions. But the best thing for me at St. John is I think we had like 500 kids in 7th through 12th grade. And I think that not only did we get a better education at St. John, but also the benefit of having small classrooms and the camaraderie and the social skills learned in that kind of environment. Is it possible that maybe if we're doing this, that we'll see smaller schools that have better focus, maybe using some of the charter and magnet school models?
I think it's a great example, and we've often heard for years that our classrooms are overcrowded from our friends in the traditional public school system. And so what we've said is, well, let's get a little more school choice in the mix. Let's get some more options available. Maybe we can use this as a way to help solve that. I mean, look, I've had the benefit of going to sort of schools of all shapes and sizes. You know, my grade school, Catholic educated as well, 4th through 8th grade, was K-8, about 300 kids. I mean, really, really small. And then I went to a massive, huge public high school in Northern Virginia when my dad was stationed at the Pentagon. Both of those were good fits for me. I liked being, you know, a big fish in a small pond and then, you know, moving in, kind of being a small fish in a big pond. But that worked well for me. It's not the case for every single kid. And so what we've said is, if we can find ways to creatively take that funding, put it in that kid's backpack, let their families be empowered to decide where it goes, that's where we think we can have the most success. And even if you meet at the premise of, oh, you know, well, if we let the funds follow the kid, that's going to, we've heard this argument, quote, hurt our public schools. Why would a child or a family taking those dollars with them to the school of their choice hurt anyone? If anything, it could help maybe alleviate some of the pressure that are on those overcrowded schools. So I agree with you on the point. And I think the more options we have available, again, more robust charters, right? More robust private school choice programs, strengthening our traditional public schools. We're seeing more families gravitate towards this idea of homeschooling than ever before. So those options all have to be on the table.
And some of the focused education, some perhaps early educational focus on trades. We've got a couple of programs here where I live now in Toledo, Ohio. We have an aviation program that's part of the Toledo public school system where kids are going in learning aviation mechanics, and every airline in the country is looking for that skill. The Pensa Career Center here in Toledo, which is a massive school system, teaches everything from culinary arts to broadcasting, and kids go there to learn a specific trade, a specific skill. In Mississippi, there are a lot of rural areas, and as you're looking at this model of school choice and more private schools, charter schools, magnet schools, whatever the options may be, some of these communities in the state of Mississippi may not have that option, and the kids in those areas may suffer.
Yeah, you're right. They might not. And you take where I live in North Carolina, similar. We've got so many rural areas where that traditional public school might be the only option available. Candidly, that's okay, right? But if we can find ways to create more opportunities that might meet the needs of the students, you know, that's always the best. And you bring up a good point. Right? It's finding creative ways to ensure that education is not a one size fits all. It can't be. We have too many options available. Kids learn very differently. one size fits all doesn't tend to work. And so even in those rural areas, and we've encouraged, you mentioned that idea of micro schools. Maybe you find opportunities where you take a small group of students, meet their needs, right? But in those opportunities, then those resources from the state, right? Those state dollars that, I would argue belong to those parents should be allocated towards their children. Let that go with them. Let that go with them. And it doesn't have to be a threat. It doesn't have to be some big line in the sand that we continue to draw, because that really only seeks to grow sort of this big education system. And that's not keeping it student-centered. What we've always argued is the beauty of school choice is it keeps it family and student-centered. And you can create learning environments like those ones you mentioned. And we can look for more college and career-ready students to be able to have success across our country. I mean, you want to talk about one of the areas of the Department of Education that could go away on day one. I mean, this federal student loan program is out of control. Kids are crippled with debt for the rest of their lives. There has to be a better, smarter way to be able to do that. And promoting college career ready probably helps get us there as well.
Not everybody is cut out for college, and not everybody should go through that kind of financial burden as well. Instead, let's teach kids some skills that that can help them become more employable right out of high school, if that's the path they wish to take. He's Brian Jodice, National Press Secretary, American Federation for Children. I am on X, Brian Jodice, AFC Press on X as well. I am at Scott Sands Media on X. Brian, it's nice to have you on. I appreciate your time. We're in the Element Wealth studio in SuperTalk, Mississippi. I'm Scott Sands in for Gerard Gibbert.